Alright, so this is the visual metaphor and universal design video that I created during our time in Ireland. So we're going to start with the metaphors and start off with white privilege is an open gate. While we may not realize it, white privilege is an open gate, and an example of this is the Black Lives Matter movement that was prominent not too long ago and kind of still a thing. And it's just an example of how some of society views white privilege as kind of unfair, whereas this open gate some might argue that it's symbolic of how white privilege is more of an open gate to some, while others struggle. And this is something that not everybody agrees on, but it was just a prominent issue that some of society saw an issue with, and then thus the movement was born. White privilege is access and restriction. Some people view white privilege as a prominent issue, while others kind of view it as non-existent. People who say that is an issue might argue that white people can just enter through, for this picture symbolically on the right side, where they might not have as many hoops to jump through, and how some people view being, like, if you're not white, that sometimes it can lead to a closed door, or it can lead to more issues that you might have to jump through some more hoops, which would be symbolic through this photo of the doors on the left side. Moving on to linguistic diversity, this slide says that linguistic diversity is a garden. And I realize that I will have many ESL students in my classroom, and that no two are exactly alike. The different flowers represent different languages and different speaking styles, just in accents and how kids talk, and how they all represent different parts, but they come together to form a beautiful garden. Linguistic diversity is a closed gate. Sometimes linguistic diversity can act as a barrier between students and their peers as well as their teachers. If a student is ESL, or not even ESL, if they just have a different speaking style or accent, they do have the potential to struggle with communication and speaking English, even though the ESL students may understand some. This can lead to problems that prevent the student from communicating effectively, be it with their peers or a teacher or just anybody that they come in contact with. Moving on to SES diversity, and this one says that SES diversity is construction, because those who live in poverty and are actively trying to get out can be related to this. During construction, there's a ton of work and effort being put in to see final results, which is how some students and their families escape poverty and come to a better life. So if you think about it, when you're looking at construction, it kind of looks ugly and messy and kind of gross, but on the other side becomes a beautiful structure or whatever is being created, which can be related to families struggling during hard times, but being able to come out on the other side and doing much better than they did before. SES diversity and poverty is a high wall. Students who are stuck in poverty may not have the same opportunities as those who are financially well off, so overcoming obstacles can be more of a challenge. SES diversity can be a closed door. Some students who live in poverty may not be able to experience the same as those who are better off financially. And this is partially why I think that school funding is so important, which is so all students can share the same opportunities, which if this is not provided, it could feel like a closed door in a student's face, which is unfair, especially to young children, because they don't understand everything just yet. SES diversity is an overbearing book bag. Life can be much harder for students if their families struggle. The student, particularly in high school, might have to work a job or two to help keep their family afloat, which can be very overbearing and put a whole lot of pressure on the student, which is kind of symbolic of how the little girl's backpack was so big even though she was so small. Cultural diversity is seeing the world through someone else's perspective. Even in the same culture, each individual is very different. This is why we as teachers need to take extra effort to actively try to see another student's perspective, which especially is true if that student is used to another culture. they might do things that we don't do, or we might do things they don't do, and so it's important to get that whole background of what is completely going on. Cultural diversity is being different, as we all wore the same uniform when we went to go visit the schools. That represents our basic humanity. However, the ladies in this picture are all carrying different book bags or purses, which represents individuality, and this correlates to students, because students represent their different cultures, even though we all share the same humanity. Gender diversity is represented in the cows and sheep. Both cows and sheep are necessities to the Irish environment and found all over the country. They are both animals, yet they are very different. You can take care of them similarly, yet they have unique differences that make them distinctly apart from one another, which is just the same for boys and girls, because while they are both humans, we are both the same, we are also vastly different. And our differences can be found in how we learn, how we act, and stuff like that. Gender diversity is an arrow. While the three arrows look different, each one serves the same purpose. Children are each different in their own unique way, just as boys and girls are different, yet still similar, just like we talked about in the previous slide. Moving on to universal design. The bumps on the ground are there to serve who are visually impaired, and it allows them to walk, those people who walk with a white cane are able to tell when they're getting close to the edge of the platform so that they don't walk off the edge, which is very important. This boardwalk was in Greystones, near the mountain for the walk to Bray, and I noticed that when I was on it, there was no railing for one of the sides. In this picture, I believe the right side does, but the left side is just a straight drop, probably about 50 feet, just into water. And I think that that's very dangerous for anyone who has a visual impairment, because even if you do have a walking stick, you might not benefit just from that as much as you would a railing, because especially even with people with small children, or if you slip and fall or something like that, that would be a very unfortunate ending. This staircase was located in the Little Museum in Dublin, and there was no elevator in the building, so that would pose a pretty big problem for someone who is in a wheelchair or on crutches, because those are a lot of stairs that you would have to climb, and that is not simply possible for some. This was a ramp that I found in use for a wheelchair. You can kind of see somebody using it to get on the dart, and this is obviously useful because you didn't want to have to worry about the gap, which was a decent size and necessary enough for the ramp. This toilet I found in one of the schools that we went to, and obviously the railings on the side are used for people who might have a physical disability, might not be able to stand up or sit down quite easily, might need a little bit more assistance with that. This ramp was one that I found getting on and off of the ferry at the Aran Islands. It does have ridges so that people walking down it don't slip and fall, but it is wide enough where a stroller or wheelchair can travel on it without hitting the bumps and ridges. This is another toilet that I found at a Starbucks in Dublin. This one also includes not only the handles for extra assistance, but a string in case anybody absolutely needs help or has fallen or something along the line. There is also, in the picture on the right, there's a blue light, which is a signal in case anybody does pull the string so that they know somebody needs assistance. These stoplights I thought were particularly intriguing because one of them on the left, kind of hard to see, but is for pedestrians. The other one on the right is for bikes, which I'm not used to seeing here in America, so I kind of thought that was cool. I think it's especially beneficial since a lot of people like to bike in Dublin. And this is just one of the two elevators that if you get off the dart on one side, you have to travel up and across the bridge to get to the other side. This is beneficial so that people who are in wheelchairs or who can't walk upstairs very well didn't have to. So this writing was on the street that I noticed. It serves as a helpful reminder to be safe when crossing the street. And this could be especially helpful for deaf people, as this contraption, for lack of a better term, this button was designed it was designed to help people who are blind specifically, because it does beep whenever you push it to cross the street, so that it notifies you when it is safe. And going back to this one, it could be especially helpful for deaf people, as they can't hear the beeping of the button, and it does ensure that they're given a good reminder before crossing the street. One thing that I noticed about this was that the doors did not have the handicap accessible button on the wall to automatically open for someone in a wheelchair, and that button is a good example of universal design and how it benefits people who need it, just as that could benefit children in a school where they might not be able to, or they might not have quite learned how to maneuver themselves. And so universal design is not only helpful for people who are handicapped or have an impairment, but it is useful for everybody, because sometimes it makes life easier for everybody in general, whereas we may not need it, but it is definitely beneficial for all students in a classroom. And back to the top with the metaphors, it is absolutely important that we understand that there is a lot of diversity in our classrooms and how each child is different, and that no matter what, we need to treat all of our students the same, but also understand their backgrounds and where every student comes from.